And Dr. Moran, I wish FAMU had a women's golf team, but
Yeah, that would be
recording,
exciting.
everyone. Welcome.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks. I think we all know each other, but this gets watched by others who don't know us. So we'll go around. Stephen Hall, the current president of the Capital Chapter SGMP, and kind of go around where I see everybody on my screen. Gabrielle.
I'm Gabrielle. I'm vice president of SGMP, Florida Capital Chapter, and I'm a meeting planner.
All right. James.
I'm James Moran, meeting planner, past president, two presidents past. I am director of alumni engagement at College of Pharmacy, FAMU. Excited to be here.
Latrell.
Good evening. My name is Latrell Hardwick. I am working on my meeting planner credentials. Currently, I'm an independent insurance adjuster.
Are you working on your CMP or your CGMP?
The CGMP, I believe.
Okay, great. With SGMP?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Cool.
And last but not least.
I'm Rose Patterson. I work with Stephen over here at the Office of State Courts Administrator. I'm the chief of our court education unit, and I'm not a meeting planner, but I'm at a lot of meetings.
You have a fleet of meeting planners who work for you.
Fleet of meeting planners that work for me, yes, and they're all amazing.
Well, this month we wanted to dig into a topic that some may, think, well, timely. We just had the holidays, and that's often a time where folks go and get a little more community minded. That we wanted to see, what are some ways that you can incorporate volunteerism and community service in your meetings and other events, just depending on what it is you're planning. Rose has a lot of experience in Kiwanis and other service groups that she's been involved with over the years. I've been touched a little on United Way and some others, different nonprofits, and many of us have been. So definitely want to have a open conversation where feel free to just chime in your experiences, especially war stories, the stuff good and bad. In doing this, first thing you got to figure out is it appropriate? And can you even do it? And there's going to be, particularly since our focus is government meeting planners, sometimes you just can't. It depends on, exactly who your audience is. There are some audiences and events that it does not lend themselves well to being able to do a volunteer project or a community service project. And I'll kind of go into some of the different options that are out there. By no means is it an exhaustive list, but the first thing you do is you look at what is it that we're planning? What is this event? Where is it? And then, looking at your audience to determine, what is appropriate? What can I do that would blend well? If you're, working, for example, if you get to work with maybe a veterans group, well, then there's all kinds of options that would likely be very appropriate to add that in there. Well, in Rose's case, doing an education program for judges, maybe not. It's going to depend on, exactly what you're doing and also the purpose you're there for. If you're planning a week-long event, well, you've got a much better chance of being able to incorporate one or more pieces in there than if you're doing a one-day in and out business meeting. So, you go through that and figure out, what is appropriate for that audience. And then when you're actually having where are you having the event at? Because you can have limitations based on your venue. There are some ways to do service or volunteerism that, some things that might involve a fun run or a walk or something that raises money. Well, there are some venues that that'll get cost prohibitive because they may have additional insurance requirements. They may have, additional costs that they require you to pay out for, changes in meeting space or doing something along those lines. And, they may go that, hey, this is not, just period appropriate for the particular venue that you have. So in looking at that, I mean, there is really, the sky's the limit in the way that you can incorporate this. You can do things where you're doing it on site while you're at your event. You can do different things that are pre-event and post-event. Some of it, where you really often have to be careful, particularly, again, government meeting planning, is when it deals with money. Are you going to be raising money for a cause or an issue and fundraising? And that's where, you're going to have to kind of walk a tightrope. It's often easier if you can do like a service project. And again, you're doing a week-long event, it may be easy to have some sort of a service project, but maybe not if there's nothing nearby. An example of something that I've been involved with a couple of organizations have done is, instead of adopting a road like you'll see, sometimes you can adopt the road for a day. In the case I've been involved, we've done a park a couple of times where we went and just did a cleanup, afternoon at the park. Another time was more of a gully or something. I don't remember the exact right term, but it was in a semi-marshy area in north of Leon County where folks throw trash. And so, we did a cleanup day, and I say cleanup day, it really wasn't a day. It was, 2 or 3 hours. And that's something where, depending on where your venue is, you might be able to add in something like that that's done first thing in the morning or last thing in the afternoon, before a meal or something like that, where you can throw that in there. And it's often no cost, but you do have to probably go through and get some approvals. You can't just show up at places and bring a big group to go do something like that without at least running through a couple channels. But I'll talk about approvals in a few minutes. But some of the others that I know I've had experience in, and of course, folks can chime in and add others. We've all seen different runs, walks, combinations of the two, whether sometime a bike, drive, where, you're riding the bike, not buying bikes, but the bike drives have been done. And speaking of, drives are often something where it's easy to add into your event. Particularly, I know many of us are used to, around the holidays, having the Toys for Tots drive. And I've been invited to many meetings where they are doing a drive, where it's you bring a toy or you bring a canned good for a donation to, or some other non-perishable as a donation. That's one of the, usually easier things to do, because it's fairly passive for folks. Folks who want to will do it. Others don't feel as pressured because you're not, seeing, you'll know exactly who went on the cleanup effort, because you'll see them and they'll see you, and there will be pictures and all that. But something like donating school supplies, which is another popular one, that's something where you walk by, you give your donation and you go. So there's less pressure on people. At least that's the way I've experienced it, is they feel a little more easy about doing that. But I mean, that can also be a pre-event, during your event, post-event, or any combination thereof. But I mean, the sky's the limit on that. We just touched on food, school supplies, bikes, teddy bears. I've done one which we actually did at work somewhat. We did blankets to donate to the homeless shelter. Got folks toiletries. That's another one that's big for homeless shelters. And we actually had some employees who used to, I don't know if anybody currently does it, every time they went to hotels, they usually brought their own soap and other stuff, but they would take what the hotel gave them and bring it back to give to the homeless shelter. And, I know, like, Rose just came back from a week. She and I will be gone a week in February. It's real easy to add that up. Now, it's not as easy as it used to be to add that up, because the hotels aren't, giving you that daily service that you used to get. But again, that's another easy passive thing that you can do that, folks will can enjoy and feel good. Other things where we've seen it done fairly well are offering your professional services, depending on what the group is. There are, different like legal services that you might be able to offer. Again, what's appropriate for the people you're dealing with and for the, the event. For that, it may be you're, doing the veteran stand down type event, where if you're going to do something in tandem with one of those, well, you can have your folks encouraged to stay an extra day and volunteer at that, or give them some free time one afternoon that they can go help with that. And it doesn't have to be something that big like one of those events. It could also just be where they're volunteering their time at a school or somewhere that would use not even their professional services, just their regular services of whatever that happens to be. And it may also just be grunt work. What do y'all need done? We'll be able to provide that. Another thing where you kind of have to be a little more careful, again, government meeting planning, is dealing with you're selling anything. I'm sure every one of us got hit up by someone recently selling wrapping paper, or what was it you were selling, Rose? Hams or
Hams.
Hams.
They were good, but man, I ate a lot of ham.
But it all depends on your group whether or not that works. And for those in government employment, sometimes you got to keep that outside. You can't sell the wrapping paper and all of that to your colleagues, at least not during business hours in your office, that sort of thing. Kind of the days, at least in my experience, where you kind of went around here, who wants Girl Scout cookies? Who wants this? That's kind of shied away from that to be more of a, oh, well, where my child is selling this and I'm going to keep this list on my desk or on my door or whatever, and you can just sign up that way. To even that's kind of shied away. Because you also, when you're dealing with that, some people felt intimidated. Oh, well, that's the boss. The boss is going to know if I buy or don't buy. And so I know that's another reason those are shied away. So it really depends on your group, whether or not something like that works. For groups that like Rose and I plan for, we wouldn't do anything like that. We could maybe try to find something else, but groups that some of you plan for and with could certainly may have an option like that. But it's certainly one you have to be very careful of. Plus, if whatever you're doing it with, you've got to be careful. There's often other rules. Raffles, games of chance, that sort of thing. There are statutes, at least in Florida, on how you can do that, what can be offered, how it has to be done. You can't have a minimum number of tickets that you're going to sell in order to do the drawing. Whatever you say you're going to give away, if you sell one ticket, you have to, and that's all you sell, you have to do the drawing and give the item away. Otherwise, it's illegal. So, that's where you may have to look into what legal concerns there are. And that's where, again, those sales get messy. Others can be, other games, that sort of some sort of gamification of something. Again, you have to be careful, because particularly if you add money into that, that gets, tricky, and you've got to wander down that path. And I'll let Rose tell some of her stories if she has any to add in this and some other examples. You're tired of hearing me.
Yeah, well, I'll come at it from a couple of different angles. One is that we'll talk about a little bit in a minute about civic organizations and how they could be a good avenue to tie into some of these things, but also for networking for meeting planners. I think there's sort of a forgotten group in that uses meeting planning. So there could be mutually beneficial things around that area. But an example of a successful way that we did some, not fundraising, but item raising for not-for-profits, is that we actually partner with a group called the Florida Association of Families and Conciliation Courts. It's a separate 501c3 not-for-profit group, but it's also made up of court folks, right? Judges, attorneys, therapists, pretty much any person that you would see inside of a divorce case. Think of it like that. Accountants, all these folks go to this event, and they have vendors there. We don't generally deal with vendors. It's just, put aside any kind of state policy, the canons of judicial ethics and other things really make it almost impossible to do some of that stuff. But we had this partnership with this other group, and it's a civic minded, like a give back. I mean, some of them are kind of hippie types, and they're out there helping kids and guardians ad litem and blah blah, and it's intuitive to them to bring to want to engage. So one year we partnered with a charity called Miles to Go, which we actually met at a planning meeting that was hosted out at Goodwood, I think, and I can't remember if it was Kissimmee or who hosted that, Orlando.
I think it's Orlando. Usually, I know Orlando does one there most every year. And
it would have been Orlando because Miles to Go is based out of Orlando, and they saw these people on TV. And Miles is a kid who's he's autistic, but he's always thinking and wanting to give back. And they were driving through their community, and the mother saw a homeless person, or we're not supposed to call him homeless now, a non sheltered person, or I can't remember, there's a term for it now, and had to explain to Miles what was going on. What is this person doing, and why do they want money from us? And so she told Miles about her hesitation to give money to these individuals because of a lot of different reasons, including there's a lot of them, and if you gave everyone $5, you'd be broke. So they came up with this idea that they were going to put together bags, real bags, like drawstring bags with stuff that homeless people could use. And so they started to research on the internet. They made a partnership with Bombas Sock Company and some other national groups, and they created homeless kits that they now, if they see someone on the corner, they give them actually a backpack full of, there's like a flashlight, there's chapstick, there's protein bars, there's like stuff in there, Bombas socks, there's stuff in there, toothbrushes, toothpaste, deodorant, stuff that you wouldn't think of, but there's actually folks who work with the homeless population. There's like lists that you can get. So anyhow, we partnered with them and said, okay, well, what can we do to help fill as many Miles to Go bags as we can in Orlando at the Florida Mall Hotel where we hosted the event. And we started working directly with Miles to Go, the folks over at FLAFCC, which was the private group. And then we pulled in the vendors. So we did a vendor bingo, which was another idea we stole from this event that Orlando hosted here in Tallahassee, where the vendors would bring in, toothbrush. One would do toothpaste, another toothbrush, chapstick. So they sort of divided out stuff. And then the individuals attending the conference would go to each vendor table and get their cards stamped and would be able to take one of those items and put it in their Miles to Go bag. So we ended up making I can't remember, 125 or 150 Miles to Go bags. And then in addition to that, at the same time, we did a diaper drive for it wasn't Miles to Go, but it was a local food pantry. So we had like two things going on at the same time, which was hugely popular. Diaper drives, by the way, are hugely needed, and something that you can, people just need the stuff. You can bring them to a food bank, whatever, and get rid of it, so to speak, pretty easily without having to sweat that. So that was an example of a real success on a drive that didn't cost a lot of money, and people just, the vendors brought stuff in, the participants brought stuff in, and we just made a whole ton of bags. And Miles to Go was really happy. And Miles himself came and spoke at the opening reception, which was really neat. So I've been a Kiwanian. I'm in the Kiwanis Club here in town, Capital City Club. I've been doing it for going on 20 years, I think. Prior to that, I was a Rotarian. And these civic organizations, in many respects, they sort of work in the background of communities and do a lot of stuff that just goes unnoticed. So I think there's ways to engage a group like Kiwanis or Rotary or Pilot Club's another one, your veterans groups, VFW, et cetera, and try to pull them in. So if you're going into the Orlando area and you're working on a big conference or even a small conference, and you kind of plug into their civic groups, they'll give you ideas too. And they won't even ask you to sell stuff probably. And the other thing when we were planning for this that I thought of, Stephen, that is sort of a value added, that a meeting planner could bring to the table and infuse these ideas. And how do you get your attendees uber engaged in what is going on? Not just the content, but all of the important stuff that happens in the hallways of these events where learning continues, at the free happy hour at the Embassy Suites, we really enjoy that. And, and how do you keep people collaborating? And I thought of this because one of our judges is a Kiwanian and Bartow. And then we were talking and other people came up, oh, hey, I'm a Rotarian, I'm a this, I'm a that. That you could almost set up the ability within a conference app or something for people to self-identify and congregate together around things like that. Dr. Moran, I also think of alumni groups. Wouldn't it be cool at some of these things? Yeah, to provide, hey, let's all meet down at the restaurant, all the FAMU alums. And then I know we'll, like at our events, we'll have more than a handful of alums from undergrad and from law school.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think about that, and anything that gets people, building those contacts, and then it provides just an extra, thing that Gabrielle and Latriel, I don't want to mispronounce your name.
No, Latrell is fine.
Latrell, okay. The value added that you can bring to your customers, and make them. And then they're building, connections within the community. The other thing I'll say about civic groups, and I think this hits on everyone who's here, is we're always looking for speakers, always. And even if it's speaking about meeting planning, that's helpful because it's like an unknown universe. And in the end, all of these groups have meetings. They have conferences, we do regional things, we do statewide things. The Kiwanis has a statewide headquarters in Sanford. I can't remember where Rotary is. I mean, these are like contacts, people that you can reach out to and kind of, might be sort of untapped, and then tie it into, a bigger picture of giving back that makes everybody look good in the end. I don't have any horror stories except my car smelled like ham for 2 weeks. Over Christmas, smoked ham. It was delicious, but every time I got in there, I'm like, I'm so hungry. But that's all I got, I think.
I really like the bag idea. I think, that could be, very popular. And again, it all depends on your audience. Some are going to be very into it and others, maybe not. So, looking at that and not only looking at civic organizations, but then looking at the nonprofits, that are a little more, the 501c3 or whatever their designation may be, but that's the food banks and then other service organizations, and that's where, you've got to look at too, what approval do you need? And that's going to be both inward and outward. What approvals do you have to get within those who are, most of us aren't the final decision maker in our meetings and our planning. So you got to look at just those who are helping to plan and are in charge of that event. And then you may have to go above that. Like with us, we would need to go up to our, management and make sure we've got that buy-in and nobody sees any issues or conflicts or anything with that. And then the other side of that is the outward approval. Is what you're going to do? Do you need to run it by the hotel or wherever you're having it at? Even just something like, hey, we're going to have folks, donate school supplies or the stuff for the miles bags. You don't want to throw a surprise out there with your venue because you just never know. They may have just had a horror story and now the management's going to come down and, what are y'all doing? This isn't part of your, event. You just don't know. So you don't ever want to make your sales contact and your hotel or other venue contacts, caught off guard. But then the other things, you need their help, you need their support to do some sort of a setup or something along those lines with it. But you also may need to get some support or approval to do it. Like we mentioned, the possibility of doing a cleanup day. Well, you can't, you know, if you went to a park and you just kind of picked up when you're walking around, that's one thing. You don't have to obviously have to get approval for that. But if you're bringing 20, 50 people to some place like that, you need to coordinate that. So you got to look into, depending on what it is, what do we need to do? And then if you're involving one of these civic organizations, nonprofit, food bank, et cetera, you know, they all appreciate donations and support, but it's best to coordinate with them with that, because they want to, they have a hard time saying no, but sometimes you're throwing it in the worst possible time for them, and that they're not going to be able to have a rep there, or they're not going to be able to do what they might do if you were doing it the very next day, versus or they might have a little tweak, or they may have forms, all kinds of other things, and they have administrative, not only policies, but they've got laws and statutes they have to follow. Even the most well-intentioned person, even doing your own research, you might miss something. And so that's where, that's that outward approval of who else do you need to engage and involve in that, so that you can make sure you're doing it, with all the things you need to have planned up in there. Does anybody have any other examples of things where they've added in some sort of volunteerism or community service component in your meetings?
Yes, very recently, the month of December, the local chapter of the Leon County Alumni Association adopted the Hope House, which is on West Tennessee. And what we did is received from that particular board a list of the needs of the Hope House. And if you are not familiar with the Hope House, is anyone familiar with the Hope House? Okay. And so what we had was a list of those, their needs. Also, we invited some of the members that were, of course, less fortunate to our holiday social. They'd never been in the company of a host, a lot of different, people that really cared about their needs. And we provided them based on that list, above and beyond. That took about 3 SUVs full of supplies. One of the vehicles was mine. and then we drove it over, and we had to have a 4th vehicle to drive them, but all of the gifts we did drive over, a drop off to them, and they were almost in tears because they never had that outpour of needs just like that. Also, the second thing is that growing up, my family was always civic minded, and I continue that. And just Saturday before last, I think it was Saturday the 7th, whatever that Saturday was, I drove to Monticello, and I used to be on the American Red Cross board as of this past June, but I still volunteer with the fire department, Red Cross, and then get the fraternity. We went to Monticello, Florida, to install fire alarms. They're free fire alarms that Red Cross provide for any community of need. And the fire alarms are last for 10 years. The batteries last for 10 years. They're not connected to the electrical system, which can cause a problem when there are thunderstorms, electrical storms as such. But my team, which was 3 of us, installed 50 ourselves. Each team has about somewhere between 30 or 40, and my team installed 45. And you'd be amazed at the number of homes that we visited in underserved communities that did not have a fire alarm at all in their homes, or they had those fire alarms that they ripped from the ceiling or the wall
Because they were,
because it jerked too much, right? And it shouldn't have been in the kitchen to begin with, because they would continue to go off because of smoke and heat. So we were able then to educate them, install this time just 3 in the home, but oftentimes it's unlimited based on the square footage of the home or what the needs are. And then they were so grateful, and share it with them to make sure that they had an escape plan. And if there are other issues or friends or family members that are in need of these fire alarms, they can make a phone call in that area, and then those alarms would be available to them. And when the battery goes out in 10 years, they may not remember or may not even have the pamphlet, but it can be replaced for free in any community in the state of Florida. This service is available to them. So I enjoyed it because you get different, like you said, civic organizations working together, the fire department, American Red Cross, Alumni Association, fraternities and sororities that have never seen those kinds of things, or had no idea that an apartment or home that may not have a fire alarm in those blighted areas, but is always heartwarming and rewarding for me.
Oh, that's something I've never heard of that program. So if nothing else, I think it's I'm going to take that away and advertise it. And
bring it
you
up
hit
at
a,
our Kiwanis too. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
you hit an important part there or point that I meant to make earlier, is another reason for that outward reach to the organization is, what do they need? Because yeah, you can get a list from their website often, but that's their generic list of all the general needs of stuff but what do they need right now? So when, what is it that, is it toothpaste that's what they're really missing? I got plenty of deodorant and soap and all that, but right now they really need toothpaste. If you don't ask, you don't know that. And so that's a very important thing to find out. Anybody else have any little stories of stuff they've experienced?
So I have a civic heart and have done a lot, including having my own nonprofit organization. But back when we met in person before COVID with SGMP, I coordinated several charity drive events where, like, I love your bag idea, but we would collect items for people who were homeless. We would collect, actually people would bring in those hotel shampoo. I'm a collector of those. I bring my own soaps and stuff. And then if I'm in a hotel that isn't eco-friendly, I just collect everything that I get and I bring it and save it up and donate it. But anyway, we had several different drives. One was collecting for the Hope community. One was for the homeless shelter, the Kearney Center. One was for FHP, collecting stuffed animals for FHP to hand out and to kids and such in times of crisis, crashes, domestic violence, things like that. Yeah, we had one where we collected supplies for hurricane survivors, hurricane victims, and I just think that it makes people feel like they're a sense of community. And then I've attended some really big conferences where these activities have been super impressive, where people are putting together these kits. Like, for example, you mentioned a bag. They had kits where we all got to spend hours, getting to know each other by assembling these kits that were then distributed to a local nonprofit organization. I thought that was really clever. So.
And that's a whole other thing to do, is add that in as, maybe it's your closing event of a day, right as you're going into happy hour, or it's part of a reception kind of a thing. I think, folks would, could really like that. So no, those are great.
Especially
Latrell, any stories on your side?
I'm sorry.
No worries. So before I left corporate America, one of the positions that I had was community outreach for the African American Inclusion Group. So we were involved in all kinds of different events, such as fundraising drives for schools that are underprivileged schools, Title I schools that the kids don't have, not just the kids, but even the schools didn't have the proper amount of toilet paper, paper towels, hand sanitizer, those kind of things. So we would always do a drive for that. We would sometimes reach out to United Way as well as the principals at some of those schools, or to identify families that were in need and provide new clothing, new shoes, a particular toy, or if the family didn't have a computer or a laptop, we would, the company would provide a laptop to those families. And then some of the funner things that we got to do, City Year would always have an event where there was something that was artistic, so to speak. So like one year we got to paint tiles that went on a mural in a Title I school here. We were able to decorate and design pencil bags, totes for teachers. So, and so what we did to make it more fun for our company was we had a competition, a contest to see who could come up with the greatest idea or who had the nicest. And the company gave them a small contribution, personal contribution, like a $25 gift certificate somewhere. But it provided a lot more people to get involved with it versus, yeah, I don't feel like, drawing or coloring or playing. And believe it or not, the $25 gift certificate, for some reason, spurred more activity with those type of fun events that we did. So,
Very nice. Rose, were you starting to say something a minute ago?
I probably was, but then I got into it Latrell, so I it was unimportant. There was one other thing I was going to suggest, and we kind of have been hitting around it. And Stephen, you talked about the time of year of events and stuff, but Dr. Gabrielle was talking about the hurricanes, and doing, so those events really present such opportunity to give back, and people getting so engaged. It also is an opportunity to support those communities, like the sooner we can get programming down into Fort Myers, for example. We're looking to do that, and are happy that some of the hotel properties we work with down there are back online, like the Sanibel Harbor Marriott. It's stunning how quickly that thing came back. That was the only other thing I was going to hit on.
Well, and timing of the year, that's a good point too, because you also want to watch for charity burnout. December is a big month that a lot of folks get asked to make donations, and it's an expensive month with Christmas. And so, that's another thing in addition to, what's appropriate for your event. Is this a good time to do, what you're trying to ask for? Will it be well received? Or are folks just gonna kind of roll their eyes because it's a bad time for them or a bad time of year? And also, well, and like depending on your group, like with us, we do with stuff with government. Well, we know when everybody gets paid. So
right.
if the event is right around, right there around payday, you might be a little better off than if you're 2 weeks from the next paycheck. Folks may be a little bit tighter with it, and rightfully they need to be. But it's, that's another consideration to take.
When are we going to meet in person?
Well, we have done a couple little things where we tried to do a little bit of that, but now we need to figure out, maybe in February or March and try to, go. We've still got Latrell's Jacksonville, right? Yeah, I knew you had a Jacksonville shirt on, but I couldn't remember.
Yes, both a Jaguar fan and a Jacksonville native.
Latrell, do you ever get to Tallahassee?
I do.
Good.
Yeah, it's not far, so
I know.
just have to make sure that I plan ahead.
Yeah. So it's possible if we had a in-person gathering, you could come every now and then.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. But I do think we can keep it hybrid in
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
meantime. So
Yeah. That's cool. And Stephen, I ended up, I don't know what the heck, I had RSV or something. I couldn't make the thing, the
Mhm.
last in-person thing we did.
But I mean, that's a matter, I think hybrid is good both for folks who are out of town, but also to allow folks, that option. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, just trying to make it across town by 5:30 to
Right.
attend something in person is a challenge.
Yeah.
That's where I'm
It is.
still at the office because it's like, I know I just, let me just stay here. I'm not even going to try to go home, just because of traffic and all that. But yeah, hopefully we'll continue doing hybrid stuff and then some, random that are like more social, just in person that you can't really do as much hybrid. But let us know if you're coming to town. We have been sticking with the third Tuesday, and it's nice to have consistency, but there's nothing to say if we give enough notice, down the road, we could do something on a different day. We just want to, make sure it's kind of planned out.
Right.
That's a good idea. What are the plans for next month?
I have got to find my notes, but I remember writing something down about a loose plan, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay.
But we'll try to get that nailed down and something out so everybody knows about it, later this week, beginning of next week, and make sure it stays on the calendar. But well, that's pretty much the main points that we wanted to cover on this, and kind of give our examples and that sort of thing. I really like some of the ideas that I'd not heard about from you all that I think maybe like a lot of the stuff Rose and I do professionally, we often shy away from something along those lines. But I think some of this is given some food for thought that maybe, depending on the right mix of attendees at some event, maybe we can, give some of this a bit of a try and see what the appetite is. Because I think, there's just a little bit of effort can go a long way and do a lot of good. So that's all I've got. Anything else, Rose?
No,
All right. Well, anybody else? Anything for the good of the order? Any announcements or anything else?
Not at this moment.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Look for an email soon to look at what we're doing in February, and we'll go from there. Everybody have a great evening.
Thank you
Bye
so
now.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
take care, everybody. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
You too.